Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest webinar in our series In the Box Extra Time. Now, with the summer approaching and the off season not too far away, we thought it would be fantastic to draw together some of the experts across fan engagement, marketing, and communications to help make sure that your summer is as productive as it can be and that you can start next season with a full steam of momentum. To kickstart this series, we are going to be focusing on growing attendances, attracting and retaining new supporters, which I know is a subject many clubs and teams need support with. To help us discuss this topic further, I'm delighted to introduce Mark Bradley from the Fan Engagement Company and Ali Crawley, who is CEO of Fanbase Clubs. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for taking some time out to share your knowledge and wisdom with us.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
And Ali, before we hand over to Mark and begin this conversation, I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about Fanbase Clubs, give us some context to what you do.
Yeah, so we started the business just as COVID was kicking off. Perfect time to launch a sports tech business all focused on growing attendances. The business, it provides any team of any size with the ability to launch various commercial products. So ticketing, hospitality bookings, launch your own app within the Fanbase experience, produce content, and really just what we're trying to do is give any team of any size the capabilities of what you would usually see in the Premier League or larger championship teams when it comes to digital experiences.
Absolutely love that, because Mark, you and I have been working on the sort of fan engagement for a long time with various different hats, and we support a lot of clubs on our club consultant program. But the point of this webinar is that we wanted to help clubs across the whole landscape. And as Ali says there, it doesn't matter what size or scale your club is. If you get the absolute basics right, you can punch with the big boys in the Premier League. Actually, some of the Premier League clubs could do with some of the pointers that we're going to talk about.
That's absolutely true. When it comes down to it, at community levels of football, that community aspect it is what makes the experience different. So you actually have a different experience to offer, and I think that's kind of the starting point, which is recognizing that the reason you are a devoted volunteer at a club, whatever level of the National League system your club operates at, that says something about the attraction of working for a club that's at the heart of its community. So by definition, you have a wonderful, I hate using the word product for something that actually is emotional in terms of, what it is, but you have something really special. So, we're not, if it was simply a case of inviting people down to a football match, then if you have quite a narrow perspective, then it can be quite difficult, because by definition, you're narrowing your audience to those people who already like football. But if you recognize those assets we already have as clubs, you've got a great starting point for getting new people to come along.
And it's such a key thing, isn't it? Attracting and retaining new supporters, how you balance that kind of physical experience with the digital. It's poised finally for this webinar session. So Mark, I'll hand over to you now to take a lead and talk us through and share, like I say, your wisdom and expertise.
Okay, well, my wisdom doesn't usually stretch as far as opening a PowerPoint in an online session, but I'm hoping that that's all now very clear and you can see that. So, and hopefully you can also see us. So, as you've very well explained, and Charlotte, what we're talking about today is how your club, at whatever level of the National League system you operate, can actually grow attendances through attracting new fans. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And just so you have an idea of what we're going to be covering, we're going to talk about why, because, I think when you think about how busy volunteers are at our clubs, actually having the time to sit down and even think about attracting new fans, we don't make assumptions. We know how many hours you put into the clubs. It's not a given that clubs have actually sat down and thought about growing attendances. Everybody could be forgiven for thinking, well, if we've had a good season and we're getting our socials and our marketing right, and we're putting on a good experience, then by definition, we'll grow organically. But actually, there's a lot of ways in which you can take hold of this. So this is a little agenda. We're going to talk about why. Why is it possible? Why would you want to do it? We're also going to look at clubs' natural assets. So what is it that you've got that actually is a strength that puts you in a great position? And we're going to look at two areas about attracting new fans. I mean, and this is learning that, you know, Charlotte, Ali, and I have all had from every level of football, both men's and women's, in this country and further afield, is that it's not just about making it easy, but it's also about making it compelling. I guess the marketing bit does the second part, and we're going to talk a little bit about both. And then, of course, to think about different kinds of supporters. For example, you know, are we going to sit down and say, let's grow attendances? The clubs that are more successful at it will think, okay, which particular groups of people are we going to attract? Are we going to look at a specific group like families with young kids? Are we going to look at parts of the community that have never engaged with us before? Are we going to look at groundhoppers? Are we going to look at people who we know used to come to games but don't come anymore? You know, so we've got to be specific about that. But then, and as an area I'm really keen to get across to everyone on the seminar today is barriers. Sometimes the work we do, and if anyone isn't aware, we're the people who run the fan experience assessment program for accredited clubs across the National League system. We work with Charlotte and Denise and with your local FA consultant to provide detailed, positive, we try to be constructive feedback by the way of a story, effectively, of a new fan going to your club and experiencing everything you do. We do pick up some, shall we say, conscious and so unconscious barriers which can have an impact on people returning. So they might come to one game, but they may not come to a second game. So I just want to talk about the business case first. I think it's important with this is to recognize the power of bringing one new fan to your club. You have the price of admission. We've had price anywhere from £4 up to £12 is kind of the typical range of ticket prices they might see. Bring one person, and that's fantastic. If they come to every game and you say have, I don't know, 35 games over the season, you might make on average £350 income, of which you then subtract your costs. But if you can get a group of fans to come, and you can get a family group where there might be 3 or 4 people in that group, you can begin to see that even one fan coming regularly to your club can make a significant difference in the revenue, the profit, if you like, that your club has and is able to reinvest into improving the match day. And the best way to experience the business, for me to illustrate the business case, is by showing you this little slide here. And we use this in all of the work we do. And it basically portrays the impact of a great experience on people's likelihood to recommend your club and to return themselves. It's based on something that some of you will have heard me talk about before called Net Promoter. And that basically says that those people who, when asked the question on the basis of your experience today, how strongly are you likely to recommend us to friends and family? And those who mark 9 and 10, you can be absolutely sure that not only will they be talking positively about your club at every opportunity they have, but they will also be coming back themselves. But in order to do this, we don't just have to provide a good experience, we have to provide an excellent one. And I think that's the point that I wanted to get across. The business case, the process of adding more people to your attendance, only kicks in when those new people and those existing fans feel that they're getting a fantastic experience. Now, I will mention at this point that, of course, we can't control the results on the pitch. You know, we might lose a game heavily, and ultimately, there's very little we can do about that. What I'm talking about is that off the pitch experience. And if you're doing this well, ultimately, it's not going to make a difference to your numbers. Is that a fair point, Charlotte, from your experience?
Absolutely. I think for those of us that have either worked in the game or volunteer in the game, you give up so many hours in a week, but you can do absolutely nothing when those players cross that white line. But that thing, isn't there? Control the controllables. It's a bit of a cliche, but just trying to make sure that anyone that does walk through your turnstile, no matter what the result, has a great experience, whether that's when they do go to the kiosk and they have someone really friendly serving them their cup of tea, or making sure that perhaps you could even do a little bit of research into the team that you're hosting. Is there anything that you can incorporate into your menu that day? I think sometimes it's often those small and thoughtful gestures and ideas that have such a huge ripple effect. So no, I would completely agree with that.
Yeah, from your experience, Ali? You see the experience as being just as valid as, or if not more so valid than the football game itself as a means of attracting fans?
More so than ever before. And I think certainly from the data that we are seeing from the teams that are using our system, which is now just approaching 100, it's we're seeing a lot of growth in attendances. And when we look at the particular teams that are seeing the best growth, and you look at what they're offering, it's very much a day out is what they're promoting themselves doing, as opposed to come here for this particular game. So that switch of realizing that you are a experience, not a football game, is proving to be very lucrative. And you know, there's some sort of, a lot of teams are also feel a bit guilty about calling that as a lucrative, or, you know, it could be profitable. But, you know, I always think, well, you're essentially treating yourselves as a not-for-profit anyway. So this is you know, the more money in the club, the better it is for the team, for the infrastructure that you can reinvest into everything. So through all levels of the game. So yeah, massive difference for those that treat it as an experience versus just a game.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ali. So let's move on. And, you know, it is an experience. It isn't just a game. And I think this slide probably illustrates that more than anything else. If you look, the match is probably happening in the last 3 or 4 points on that little map of the fan journey. And this is the point that the football itself is 90 important minutes, absolutely. But actually the fan experience stretches way before that. And there are what we call touch points. And we talk about the touch points, and we use the touch points on our fan experience assessment reports for you. So as you can see, it's likely to be social media. It's likely to be the website where people first come into contact with you. And, you know, if they're then going to engage with you and decide to go to a game, they need to know, are you selling tickets online? Do you pay on the day? How easy it is to get there? And you can see we go through all of these touch points. Now we're going to talk in more specific terms about some of the things that you can do. But I think a first important step is to look at your particular club, look at the process. The journey is probably a better word than that new fan goes through once they've decided to come to a game. And, you know, we're looking at not just telling people when the game kicks off, but as Ali and Charlotte have just mentioned, presenting that as a whole experience. And different clubs will have different strengths. Some clubs will not have any space outside the stadium to be able to provide anything that you might get at higher levels of the game, such as a fan zone. But then again, we don't charge people for our hospitality. They just come into a fantastic clubhouse. Well, we were just talking about Bromley and the amazing facility that they have. So look at this. Don't see it as a challenge. See it as a way of identifying where your strengths are and where your opportunities are. I think that's really important. And I really wanted to focus on your natural assets. And when you think about a club at you know, let's be generic and say non-league levels of the game. I mean, these days, when you look at the quality of experience in the National League, with the size of some clubs who are in the National League itself, you know, arguably they're at that level too. But let's go back to basics. What is it about our sport at this level that makes it so attractive to us as volunteers, but also to the fans that go to those games? It's not simply a way of demonstrating that you're you know, starting to be a little bit frustrated with some of the issues at elite levels of the game. Because if that were the case, we'd only be looking for customers on non-league day. You know, we're looking at what we've got, and there are many that I'm sure Charlotte and Ali, you could add to this list. But there is the one I love is being able to change ends at halftime. You know, I think that's something that, however well the elite level football club, you know, develops its experience for fans, they're never going to be able to offer that. You've got the closeness to the sport. You can hear what referees, what coaches, what players are saying. Not always a good thing, but you can. So if you bring in kids along who are really into the sport, they can really understand it. They can get into it. As I said before, you've got refreshments, you know, that are affordable. They're often iconic local food items. You've often got a really good range of drinks. The fact that you have a clubhouse means that you can get a wider group along, like a family, where perhaps one of the carers or parents doesn't like football, but they can sit in the clubhouse read a magazine, chat to other folk. I could go on and on and on, and for most clubs, you can have a drink within view of the pitch as well. We shouldn't forget for that one. Is that your experience, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for clubs listening to this, that's their unique position, and that is the unique benefit we have of the English football pyramid that makes it so, so special. And I think people are a really important factor in this as well, particularly sort of lower down the pyramid. Your volunteers are there week in, week out. They can be a real attractive pull to why people want to keep coming to your games. And you mentioned things that are unique and natural assets. I mean, people being able to bring their dogs to games, things like that. When you're looking to appeal to different audiences, the point you made at the very start, mums and families and people that perhaps have maybe been a bit overlooked by football over the decades, you can appeal to them and you can increase that attendance, you can increase that audience, you can engage with them by simply telling them come and bring your dog down, little one comes in for free. Displaying that information on your website, making that really abundantly clear, will then induce them to purchase that ticket, whether that be online or on the day as well. And also the point about being able to have a drink as well, pitch side, which is still very unique and important.
It is.
Yeah.
It certainly is. I mean, some of my club's recent results, you sometimes need a drink, to get through the 90 minutes. But I am conscious that this could go out at any time and be watched by anyone at any time. So we won't talk about our respective teams' current performances. But Ali, just getting onto this next bit here about making it easy and making it compelling. I have a friend of mine who works currently at a championship club, and he has a little saying that I absolutely love, which is, "You only have one first game." And I think it's absolutely fantastic that it's such a really it's an insightful thing to say, because you genuinely do, and so you want to get people to have that first game. You want to make it easy and you want to make it compelling. So what do I mean? What do I mean by these two things? I'll come to you in a second, Ali, because making it easy is the big thing. Now, I remember going back, I'm very old. I remember going back about 20 years when we were piloting the EFL Family Excellence Awards. And of course, Charlotte joined us as an assessor for several years during that one. And what we did when we first started, my own little family did a pilot where we spent an entire season going. We did 30 games that season, and week Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday, Wednesday, and not all of the clubs those days actually did online ticket sales. You're going back about 18, 19 years, and I remember my other half called a club to inquire about getting tickets for a game, and she was told, "Just pay on gate, love." which was great. On the one hand, for me, that would have been an expression of how warm, how intimate, and how friendly it is. But for her, she had images of someone standing holding a shepherd's purse next to a field in the middle of the country. But we have actually advanced a long way. And I just wanted to make that point that when you make it easy, there's a number of things that we can do here. Making it easy starts with making it much more than a game, talking about your natural assets, as we've talked about before, but providing details on the specific things that have the potential to be awkward or inconvenient or a hassle for those people coming to their first game. The obvious one, the big one, the one we come back to time and time again, is one of those great unspoken assets of community football, which is the free car park. The free car park, when compared with football at a higher level, is a jewel in the crown. It's a #1 record. It's winning Eurovision because it is the source of so much difficulty for people trying to go to a game at a higher level. How do you get to the ground? Well, you can't park at the ground. How far away from the ground can you park? How much is it going to cost? If you're bringing kids, how far will they have to walk? When you come to football at our level, we usually, not always, have a car park on site that's free. Why not tell people that we have a free car park to start with? Why not make it part of our marketing plan? And what about telling people that we have so many spaces and that if you get here an hour before kickoff, you can be guaranteed a space. It's free. And what are you going to do with the hour that you've got? Come into the clubhouse and enjoy the hospitality that our club has to offer. And I think that's a really simple example of something that we talk about. have you told them about your free car park? And then Ali, just for yourself, with admission, you get admission information. Social media will say the game's at 3:00. This is the opposition. Here's the postcode. It's going to be £9 for adults and £4 for juniors, etc., etc. But that is relying on the weather being good on the day, hoping that people will decide to turn up on the day. So the benefits of bringing online ticket sales to our levels of the game at this point, could you quickly sum up what you think they are from your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think there's probably just slightly wider than bringing the ticket sales online, because I think that's a nowadays, why would you not? So there's companies like Fanbase, there's also Eventbrite, there's loads of different options for you to just take things online and not have to pay up front for that service as well. So really, there is no excuse nowadays for not having something online. You're missing out on a huge group of people that like to book things in advance. Yes, there's people that like to turn up on the day, but there's a lot of people that like that security ahead of time. And if you make that, we always talk about our biggest competitors, Amazon, just in terms of speed. So we need to make our service, 3 to 10 seconds for you to go from clicking to booking. And that making it that easy to get a ticket to go to something that you've already kind of had a peak, has piqued your interest, is really important. I think one other thing in terms of making it easy, we talked about this on the Fan Experience podcast, is really simple things. There's two things. One is Google Business Profile. Not enough clubs have a Google Business Profile, and that will take somebody no more than 1 hour to fill that out and complete it. And that is, if you will go in Google and you might search for a local restaurant, and you'll get this lovely little kind of panel which will have you can call, you can get directions, you can go to the website, it will tell you the opening hours, there'll be reviews. It's such an easy way to suddenly make it easy for somebody to find you, and then make sure that your website link on there is clicked through to maybe a first-time fan experience, because you can probably guess that if they're trying to search for your club and they go through that route to find you, your best bet is they're probably going to want to go to that type of a page first. All these types of things are just such easy ways. TripAdvisor is another one. Make yourself an attraction in the local town. I just had to play around with it to make sure it's the same as the same kind of experience to register, and anyone can register a TripAdvisor attraction. Make your local sports club the attraction of the town. So there's lots of easy, free ways to just suddenly make it so easy for fans to get involved, clubs to attract new fans.
And
then,
sorry,
go on,
Mark,
Charlotte.
when I was at Bromley, that was something that we did. We had a sort of a Google profile presence, but it wasn't quickly updated. It needed a bit of lease of life, like good imagery, videos and stuff like that. And I remember getting the stats one month and saying to our chairman, we've had 3 million views and impressions. And it's kind of like, once you've taken that hour or two to set it up, it doesn't really need too much after that. Like, it was quite static, but still producing these really incredible figures for us. And it was free. So absolutely, like, if you can get that little bit of time, which I know is so precious, especially for volunteers, but it can be so fruitful. Again, sort of leaning away from the new fans slightly, because I know commercial revenue is so important for clubs. If you have that space that you want to hire out for parties and so on, again, Google Business is such a fantastic driver for that. So combining two subjects into one there. Get on Google.
Yeah, well, let me pick up from there, because we've talked about technology, and we've talked about the assets, the natural assets, just generally why games are special, and some of the specific assets we might have off the pitch. We've talked about the car park, we have the bar, we have the tea hut, we have the volunteers who are there to speak to. We also have the space, for kids to run around, etc., etc. Now, my message has always been, make it a story. Have somewhere. Now, I know, I don't want to get into different websites and their capabilities, but Ali's just talked about how simple it is these days online to be able to have some good content. I would have a new fan page, new to club name ? And I would use that as an opportunity to say a little bit about your club and its identity. we've already talked about something which is going to appeal to younger people, and that is the expectation that they will buy something with a phone and use the phone to gain entry to the event. That's an expectation for probably anyone under the age of 25 these days. But also being able to tell that story in an effective way is really important. We've spotted clubs further up the football pyramid. Rotherham United's a good example. Plymouth is another one, who use a video. And I think there's one club, and I'm trying to remember it now, who use a child's voice actually over that video. And that's more about their family experience. But these days, with a phone, you can record a video of what it's like to arrive at your ground, being greeted by a friendly person at the car park, walking through the turnstile. You can bring to life your club's fan experience on a match day. And with websites, Twitter accounts such as @Footy Scran, which has really lifted the interest in match day refreshments. So go pictorial. If you can't, add a big section to your website, go pictorial on social media. Make sure that your social media pre-match is half about the game itself and half about what people are going to experience. I've got a couple of good examples here. Hats off to Farnham Town. They both come, from the same club here. They had they've got a visiting the town page. I think this was for a particular match they were having, but I love that. It's a picture of everything you need to know. It fits on a phone screen. It looks fantastic online. It would make a fantastic poster. I'm sure they use it around the town for match day. But then think about remember the different groups that we talked about? I love this picture. The first 20 kids at the ground today wearing Farnham Town shirts will get a free Easter egg. That's right out of the Chicago Cubs playbook. That really is. It absolutely is. And it's something that we have yes, it comes down to volunteers and having the time to do it. But we can actually take away a lot of things that don't add value when promoting matches, and we can put in a little bit that actually adds a lot more value. So I think that's just something I'd like to get across to you. And here's another one from Durham Women, who are currently in the Women's Championship, and they're part of our accredited clubs work this season. We're just getting started and really enjoying what these clubs have to offer. One of our assessors was at Barnsley against Newcastle United in the Women's National League, and had one of the best experience that she's ever had assessing a football match. This is something Durham Women do to actually overcome the perceived concern that football is expensive. Now, in the Northeast, we have two large competing clubs, Newcastle and Sunderland. The latter is my team. And I was born close to Durham, and starting a women's club in Durham, and this only started a decade ago, you've got to try and find a presence. So Mark Donnelly and the team up there have done a lot of work to promote the club and to try and proactively answer concerns and questions people might have. And I love this idea. It's a little gift that goes out in the weeks coming up to a match day. This is from a few years ago, so I can't guarantee you that the prices are the same. They're now playing at a different ground. They're at Maiden Castle now, as where they were here. But just a little thing, because it is a benefit. It is something that it's an asset of our game, affordability. But actually, the bigger picture is something that we could promote. So I'm going to just again invite a couple of comments, Charlotte and Ali, from different kinds of supporters. It's very easy to see the football supporter as, I don't know, white, working class male, 35 to 50, likes a pint of lager, and some of us subconsciously actually promote that. And our match days are designed to serve that audience. But what do we need to think about when we want to attract different kinds of supporters? I just thought I'd open that up, Charlotte. You've a lot of experience at this level of the game, families in particular.
Yeah. I was just, hearing and listening to you there, Mark. I think the first thing that sprung to mind was a campaign with Bromley, and it's a very unique example I'm going to give because it's linked with some success on the football pitch, but the principle of it remains the same. It was me looking to evaluate and look at what Bromley has. What is unique about Bromley? What is the strength of Bromley? Because we all need to play to our own strengths. Every football club does. And we'd made the final of the FA Trophy last season, a fantastic occasion, final at Wembley Stadium. We happened to win it as well, which, that there was this massive momentum. And we had 13,000 people there, I think. And I just remember after the trophy lift and on the train home, my little brain was still whirling away thinking, if we can get a percentage of that coming 1% each week, that is going to really change our football club. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And I was like, there's got to be a way for us to capitalize upon the success on the pitch, this profile in the community. And I just had this random idea that I pitched to my chairman about the fact that the game was 97 minutes and this was a once in a, you know, fan generation perhaps experience. Anyway, I'll cut to the chase. We put a season ticket offer promotion, £97 for a season ticket for 97 hours. And I remember the chairman messaging me, just, you know, this is unbelievable. Like, he was very, very skeptical about it. He took convincing, and he said to me it was me pushing that idea through that really convinced him of it, because he could have lost a lot of money had it nosedived. Anyway, we went from having about 300 season ticket holders to 3,000. And the point of that was that I wasn't trying, as much as you've always got your core contingent there and you have to think about them and you have to service them, and that was always very much at the forefront, think about that whole new world. And what tied in really nicely with that was that the risk was minimized by the time difference, so that if it hadn't gone well, we could still have a summer of promoting the standard pricing. That 97 quid was obviously super affordable at a time of the cost of living crisis. And the data that we'd glean from it as well, if nothing else, we'd have a value of, it doesn't matter how many games they come to, we can build that rapport with them. So different kinds of supporters can come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes it's just really thinking about that eye-catching offer and what will make a splash, because of course we didn't really spend much money having to promote that. It promoted itself. And it's given a legacy now. We actually spoke a lot about moving away from a season ticket to a subscription, and I've left Bromley now, but I'm really pleased that they've taken that idea and they're now doing a subscription service to again enhance affordability, but also why do we have to do things because that's the way football's always done them.
Yeah,
you know,
such a good point. And I know, you know, we're talking about one of the highest levels, you know, in non-league, and the next example I'm going to give is even higher, but I think it makes a point that is absolutely fundamental. So, you know, Ali has just become a dad for the second time. He's got 2 young kids. What are his local community club going to be doing to make it easy for them to get there? Now, back in 2006-07, when we piloted the EFL's, or the Football League's Family Excellence Awards, over the 3 previous seasons, junior season ticket growth was around 0.5%. That's information that, you know, that's known about that. So 0.5%. So basically, if you had 200 people, you'd have 201 after 3 years. After the first 10 years of a program that focused on the family experience, rated clubs' experiences, and provided advice on what they could do better, 10 seasons later, the increase in junior season tickets was 45%. You know, so it's significant. It's a significant growth, and that has continued. You know, it's still, I think, 41% now compared to that period going back, which is what, 15, 16, 17 years. So the point is that if you do something for families, you'll be rewarded with numbers. And it combines a number of factors. It combines anticipating the sort of needs that they will have. So if you've got older kids, you're going to want to have something to keep them occupied in that pre-match period, whether it's face painting, whether it's keeping up, or even, as my friend Richard back at Marine did a few seasons ago, which is to have an inter-school half-time penalty shootout on the pitch during the better months of the year weather-wise. Because not only do those kids come with their parents and carers, but their friends come. And of course, the opposition comes as well. And if you have one game, you know, over several weeks, quarterfinal, semi-final, final, you know, you can introduce a huge number of people to the game. But there are also little things you can do. Women is a huge potential to get women to come to non-league football. One of the things I do when I do an assessment is make a mental assessment of how many women are there as a percentage overall. But then I go into the bar and I see, and this is, I'm not stating that this is general, but on some of my assessments this season, just look at the drinks that are available. You know, it can just be lager, 2 types of lager and 2 types of cider. Wondering whether that's just one of many small things that could be addressed, you know, to make the club much more open to, you know, to women, and by definition, ultimately open it up to a much wider group of people. So, you know, Ossett United, I love this. Ossett United, of course, the 2 merged clubs in Ossett, the Sheepycorns, as they're known. They've got a nickname combined from the nicknames of the 2 previous clubs that have Ossett Town and Ossett Albion, I think. I might be wrong. Having a dedicated family stand, even if you've only got 1 seated, sheltered stand in your ground, call it a family stand, you know, because people who are going to sit or stand there are going to be people who probably want the quieter match day experience. So why not call it a family stand? Why not promote the fact that you have a family stand and do, you know, something like that? And of course, a couple of great examples. Charlotte mentioned this earlier, but we know that Aylesford Town, Leicestershire, with Bob Stretton, and also here at Easington Sports, where one of our assessors was recently, when they promote the game, they mentioned that dogs are welcome. And again, it's a little thing. I know we talked about what kinds of fans, but dogs are so important, because if people in the area around you know that dog walkers are welcomed, the dog walkers will actually be advocates for your club in all the local residential areas around the ground. And I love what Horsham FC do. Generally, we've picked up so many lovely things from down in Sussex, but I love the fact that their mascot has its own digital social media account, and which is definitely buzzing. And that's the one and only pun I'm going to attempt today. Ali, when you look at this, what do you see?
Yeah, look, the focus on the focus of making sure that you're tapping into different groups of people is so important. It's like marketing 101. Segment your audience and talk to those people. Again, just from the data, looking at when we compare the ones that are selling the most tickets, the ones that are booking out their hospitality suites, and then you look at what they then market themselves as and how they present themselves digitally, you can see it's like, you know, it's night and day between the ones that don't sell very much, and then you look at the social media presence and their website and everything else, and the fact that they are talking to that one. The big thing for them is, this is the game. Here's the, you know, potentially like quite kind of nerdy stats on, you know, all the players and everything like that, and the, you know, the twos and fro's between the teams, which is interesting. But when you take it from my example of, I've got 2 kids, I've got a 5-year-old girl, I've got a, you know, 5-day-old boy. How are you going to get the likes of me to come along, presenting it? You know, the fact that there's a mascot. If my girl absolutely loves running around, so you know, just letting all the kids run out on the pitch at half time, and just have a bit of a laugh and drop a load of balls on there. There's loads of things like that you can do. A great example in Edinburgh is Edinburgh Capitals ice hockey, which I know is a different sport, but they have one of the games, they do a big kind of drive for giving cuddly toys away to charities for kids that, you know, could do with a cuddly toy. So they invite all the families to come along, kind of discounted tickets, bring a cuddly toy, and you get to throw this cuddly toy out onto the ice, and then it all gets kind of swept up by players and everything like that, and put into bags, and big kind of hoo-ha, thank you very much. They've got Paws the Lion, who stands at the front and welcomes all the kids in, and you get photos and everything like that. And yeah, like, just making sure you're talking to those guys as much as you've talked to students, I think, is a really important market as well. Look at your, there will probably be student accommodation relatively close to your ground if there's a university remotely close to the, you know, in the same town or city. So for them, it's affordability. Talk to that audience around, you know, all in for 10 quid. That type of thing that you see in the Savannah Bananas. If you've not seen it, all you can, basically your ticket is all inclusive for everything that you'd ever want. So it's a great example, but it works. It really, really does. And it doesn't have to be massively burdensome.
Yeah, and when we do our assessments, we are pragmatic, we are realistic. We don't say to every club you should invest in a mascot, because a mascot costume can cost more than £1,000. But so look at the whole spectrum of things that you could do based on your club's, your club's assets, what your club's capabilities are, what space you have, because this ranges from face painting, from a space in the clubhouse where kids can draw pictures, right up to the throwing the teddies on the ice. And believe in County Durham it does get a bit icy, so maybe the ice comes
It does
for the football clubs up there. So just throw some teddies on the ice. The game isn't on, but you just throw teddies on. So no, I think some wonderful points have been made there. So I just wanted to talk about common barriers very, very, very briefly. And we've mentioned one of them before, which is the drinks offer. And I know this sounds strange when we're talking about new fans and attendances, but it is part of that first impression. And, you might think that 2 lagers and 2 ciders, 1 fruit flavored, might actually be good for me, but it isn't. I have a thing in my head that says if I'm going to a National League system club, whatever level, 5, 6, especially, maybe 3, 4, I'd probably expect a beer on tap these days, because non-league football has become synonymous somehow with craft ale, and I'm the old fella who likes to sit down and enjoys pint of craft ale. So actually I'm being excluded if it's just 2 lagers and 2 ciders. Now I know, again, not every club has the resource to be able to put an actual cask ale on, but again, just think about that. I know that with Wendy Newey over at United Counties League, Wendy, when she was working at when they took over Neen Community Centre in Peterborough, it was an area surrounded by many single mums with nowhere to go during the week, for that moral support as well as something to do. And they found that by adding things just like, fever tonics, sorry to do a little bit of commercial there, but, they have that kind of brand. They did it so well that the brand started providing freebies for them so they could do it better, offering Prosecco, offering cocktails, offering vermouth and things like that, that are easy to make, but actually say that you are for all of the community and just not some of them. I think, look, what I would say to clubs is walk your own match day experience. If you have I know it's hard because, volunteers, we're always short of volunteers, but even ask someone who's never been to the club before, friends or family, come to a game for us. We'll cover the price of your tickets. We'll get you something to eat. We'll look after you. But just tell us what did you find was exclusive? What was it that felt, it can be the state of the toilets, and people think, oh, women always want clean toilets. No, we all want clean toilets. Everybody wants clean toilets. We don't want toilets from the 18th century, and although it's few and far between those incidents these days, it really is a letdown when you have a pretty good fan experience, but the toilets are awful because a lot of people will judge your club by the quality of the toilets. And there are other things as well. What are you supporting? What banners and flags are around the ground? Do they potentially exclude people? It's, even if, and here's a very, very small example, a team in one region of the country where there are 2 or 3, big clubs that people could follow, have flags, scarves, a message of support, and signed photographs from only one of those clubs. So if you're a fan of the other 2 and you turn up to that club, you feel like you've gone behind enemy lines, so that just ask yourself that question. Is there anything that could potentially act as a barrier? Charlotte, Ali, have you come across this in the past when you've gone to games?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just again, building upon your point about what can clubs take away from this seminar webinar to help them, you've got eyes and ears. So those bar staff, those volunteers, let them be the eyes and ears that take on feedback and ask those questions so that you're continuously getting better and better. I think it's a really simple piece of advice, but actually it could prove to be invaluable, particularly your bar staff. They hear and see everything, and they are probably some of the most influential people behind the kiosks, and more often or not, where people do give their feedback because they're waiting for their glass to be poured, they're waiting for their cup of tea to be made, to spark that conversation and always kind of let it be known that, the good, the bad and indifferent, because as well as generating income and helping clubs to be more sustainable, you might cut out some costs. You might find some things that aren't working that you could just kind of nip in the bud. And you just never know where opportunity could spring from. So hosting those conversations to break down barriers, I think, is huge.
I think that's a great piece of advice, Charlotte. I think another point where if you do have the volunteer staff, then just past the gate, someone there, and it might be someone selling the programs or something, or some merchandise, just kind of at a temporary stand or a stall or just free. That individual there is so important. Just say, how's your experience been today, or how are you getting on today? Same question in the bar. How's your day been so far? That suddenly you've opened that conversation up. I think it's excellent. Well, it costs nothing to, and it's it's such an easy thing to do.
No, thanks, Ali. And I'm going to echo that when we wrap up now, because we have one kind of final section here, a little bit of a summary before we give you a little bit of information. And,
Mark, sorry, there's one point that I really think is really important on the common barriers, and it really is everybody's website. I think there's a huge amount of mistakes that people make on the website. One of the easiest mistakes to make is you have not changed your website from being an old format, which is all set up for a desktop, to making that something called a responsive website, which is what essentially that just means that it renders itself to the size of the device.
Yeah.
So it can become mobile friendly and iPad friendly or whatever else is. That is honestly, if you look at your own website, and not enough clubs do this, go and visit your own website, and if you cannot read what's on there, then how are you going to expect anyone else to read it? Common barrier digitally number one.
Yeah, that's a really fair point, because our assessors go to the website first and they look for information, and where they might find an address, but just a simple, easy to access bit of info that says, welcome to the club. This is what makes us special. This is why our match days are really worth coming to. This is what you can expect on a match day. And here, this is how easy it is to buy a ticket to come to a game.
Yeah.
As simple as that. So we come to the summary. So at this point, we're just going to run through a couple of these things, but I did want to pick up on a really important point that Ali made just then, because I think if you're going to do one thing in the close season to plan for next season, I think outside of the digital development work that I hope you'll be able to do, it's this, and that is to appoint a match day host. So by that, we don't mean the PA person who's introducing the game and welcoming people to the match, but just as Ali said before, have someone, and ideally one person, who understands the club and is friendly and outgoing, and have them positioned at the car park or the main entrance to the stadium. If you have two entrances, then ideally you have two people, but there's usually one main way where people come through. So make sure you're there maybe an hour before kickoff, and then make sure you're near the turnstiles as it gets to about 20 minutes before kickoff. And then make sure you're then around the ground, in different parts of the ground, making as many people as possible feel welcome. We have had assessors who've been in a room with only two other volunteers who know each other, but haven't spoken to the assessor. And actually, again, it's another excluder. Sure, when you've got 800 people for the County Cup final, and it's the biggest game of the season, you can't expect your volunteers to be able to recognize every new face. But most clubs up and down the pyramid will notice when there's a group of new people at a game. So I think having this match day host, further up the pyramid, you get here to help teams, match day ambassadors, and many of our clubs do this too, but a lot of them rely on the car park assistant being friendly. They're the first human you're going to encounter on a match day. You want them to fundamentally mirror the warmth and welcome from your club. So from that, let's just summarize what we've talked about. Different fans have different needs. And Charlotte and Ali made some fantastic points about thinking about groups like families, students, children, anybody young who just wants to use their phone to buy their ticket and to gain access. Think about that. Look at your fan journey and decide what you can do what's going to be realistic for you to do before next season. And as we've all said, you need to think about what makes your club and your match day special. Every brand, and we are brands, has a USP, a unique selling point, something that makes it different to everyone else. We're all putting football matches on. So if all we're promoting is a football match, then by definition, the person who's thinking of going to a game will probably choose the highest level up the pyramid to do that. So you need to tell people what makes yourself different. We've talked about making it easy with comms, but also making it compelling, using pictures, using videos and images to tell the story about your match day. And as Ali's underlined on several occasions, digital doesn't just help you improve the experience and, in fact, meet the expectations of a vast percentage of the population these days, but it will also provide clubs with data, which then informs the plans that they do moving forward. And as I said, we've picked up a couple of best practices, the first-time fan guide, and as I've just mentioned before, the Matchday Host. And the final point on our summary today is to think about other opportunities that are out there to help you attract more fans. You have non-league day, which happens every season. There's a website with resources, plenty of good examples of how clubs are promoting this. And finally, I mentioned Footy Scran. It's not just the only Twitter account that looks at matchday refreshments, but it's interesting because before the pandemic, it was usually showing pictures of very unpleasant things that you really wouldn't want to eat. But actually, there's been such a boom, particularly at our levels of the game, and take about Whitstable Town, their enormous burger, that, you know, just having something like that can be the difference between getting somebody to think, you know, I keep seeing pictures of that incredible burger. I'm going to get down there. I'm going to shun all the seafood in that part of East Kent, and I'm going to have a visit to Whitstable Town and, you know, and have their burger. Anything the two of you would like to add to that?
When you go, Charlotte?
No, I just really hope everyone has taken away so much. I think what's been really interesting in how the conversation is unfolded is that, of course, the focus has been on growing attendances, but some of the tips and advice that the three of us have shared will help clubs do far more than that. And I come back to that sustainability point. You know, do the hard work now. I know there's so much that volunteers put in, but some of these tips and hints and pieces of advice will just help you so much. They're planting the seeds for the long term.
Yeah, I agree with Charlotte there. And I think what we've talked about in some aspects there, especially on the digital side, you can really start to automate a lot of the manual work that you're having to do during the season by investing time now in a Google business profile. Have a look at TripAdvisor and get yourself on there. Website wise, yeah, there's loads of platforms online, like Shopify, Squarespace, Webflow. There's lots of tools that are really easy. Anyone can really use them, and don't overcomplicate it. And suddenly, for the cost of like under 200 quid, you've completely changed your digital experience for fans. I think as well, just on the existing opportunities, another one to add in there, people will have heard of the padded seat. He's all over the place. It looks at hospitality. So if you do have any form of hospitality experience, some of his favorite and some of the most popular videos are from non-league teams that have done an amazing job with their offering. And it doesn't have to be some sort of mad Man City kind of experience, but just something that's warm and you know, great value, and something that's maybe just a bit different from that perspective can be really popular. So that Footy Scran, look more widely at influencers that are just in the space. Contact them. There's nothing to lose. I think that's just some really good points to add in there.
Oh, thanks both for that. I mean, it's just, I'm going to pass back to Charlotte to wrap up now, but just a little bit of detail here. We are, as I explained earlier, supporting clubs in the National League system who are accredited with fan experience assessments. So speak to your local FA consultant if you have any questions about that. We already have a long list of clubs waiting to be assessed, and our team is going to be really busy between now, the start of the season, getting ready, and then delivering more by Christmas. If you want to contact me directly to ask some questions about that, there are the details. And I think Ali mentioned in this, we have a podcast, the Fan Experience. Ali and Charlotte and others are going to be helping us with that. I think we're up to about the second one of the third series. So you can find that on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts with that name. And again, it's designed for clubs of any size, both in men's and women's football. So Charlotte, I'll hand back to you.
Well, Mark, Ali, thank you so much. I have scribbled away so many notes here, and I hope that the volunteers and those across the game who've joined us for the webinar have found it equally as useful as well. Don't forget, the conversation doesn't stop here. We have our online community, Clubhouse, where you can find some amazing resources, blogs from Mark, the podcast that Mark alluded to, as well as our episodes of In the Box as well. And if you have any questions you want to pose, you can always reach out and contact us via there as well. Thank you both again so much for your time, and we will see you for another webinar very, very soon, and take care.